Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Robertson Jr., and this is episode 8 of the Hallowed Horror Podcast. And of course, I have with me tonight my co-host, Mr. Jason Collins.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. How you doing tonight?
I am doing well. I'm a little excited, a little nervous. This is the first episode that we are attempting to also do video simultaneously. So this week I worked to put our previous audio episodes up on YouTube, just if anybody, wanted to listen to them that way, if it was easier for them. So we thought we'd go ahead and give video a shot this time. So if you're listening to this on any of the traditional streaming methods, Apple, Spotify, what have you, and you're curious as to whether or not you prefer the video version, you can go check it out over on my YouTube page. That'll be in the show notes. And if you go and there is no video version of this episode, it means that we screwed up and we couldn't do it the way we wanted to, and we will try again next week.
And that's okay. Technical difficulties, they happen. Take tonight, for example. We've already started this twice now.
Yes. And I almost just barely got you off mute before you started talking on this intro. So it's completely my fault. But anyway.
Totally fine. I forgive you.
Thank you. We're both very tech savvy people, so this should get easier after we get one knocked out, hopefully.
I'm hoping so. Tech savvy, yes. Great on camera, no. I'm hoping to not sweat into a puddle this whole time because I know I got a camera on me, because that's usually what happens with me.
Right. We'll use visual effects and take care of that.
Okay.
No, it won't. All right. So speaking of cameras and amateurs and figuring out what we're doing, that kind of actually lends very well into the theme of tonight's movie, which is a recent personal favorite of mine, which is called HELL HOUSE LLC. And this is a movie that came out in 2015 that I discovered on Shudder. I think it was last fall sometime. I watched it, maybe around Halloween season, actually. I was looking for a scary movie. It looked good, and I'm a sucker. I talked about this in the Blair Witch Project episode that we did. I'm a sucker for found footage films in the horror realm. And this one intrigued me. I checked it out, and it blew me away. Like, I was expecting to be entertained. I was not expecting this movie to be as creepy as it was. So I was a big fan of it. And when Jason and I started this podcast, I put it on the list of movies that I wanted us to do. I wanted him to watch it so badly so we could talk about it. He did, and here we are.
Yep, here we are. I liked your segue into the amateur cameras, and this was a good one. I think. Well, this is actually the first of a trilogy right now.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure the third film is complete now and available.
Yep, all three of them are actually on Shudder, and I've not watched number 2 or number 3. I'm a little apprehensive to watch the other two, and we'll get into more about that as we're discussing the film. But the first one has been out for about 5 years now. There was, I think, maybe a 2 or 3 year gap between number 2 and number 1, and then number 3 came out the year after that, it seems, according to IMDb. So pretty recent.
Yeah, this was a fun film. As far as found footage horror films go, it was a really well done one. It was nice because the primary camera operator for this film he appeared to have some sort of experience with it. There was a lot of lockdown shots. It was like a good documentary type of film. And then that contrasted really well with the scenes where things were happening and they were running through the house, and you've got that beam of light from the flashlight on the camera, and that's all you can see. That's just that very strong vignette. And again, that just kind of leads to the anxiety and the drama and the creepiness happening. And that's what this movie was. It was a really it was a creepy movie first. There was not a lot of jump scares. In fact, I can't recall many jump scares at all. It was just a lot of build up and just a lot of creepiness.
Yeah,
it was a well done movie from that perspective.
Yeah, and with this, the found footage genre, you almost have to do things a little dynamic and a little different to kind of bend the rules to tell your story. Because obviously, if the entire movie was just shown from the one camera operator's perspective, it would have been not as effective. So we'll get in a little bit about what they did with that, because there's another really good I don't know I guess I'd call it a found footage film. there's another one of a favorite of mine that is probably also flying under a lot of people's radar that I'll talk about later that does some similar stuff to get the story told. But let's go back to what this movie is. Again, it's called HELL HOUSE LLC. It was released in 2015, written and directed by Stephen Cognetti, and stars Gore Abrams, Danny Bellini, Jared Hacker, Ryan Jennifer Jones, who did a fantastic job, if you ask me, Adam Schneider, among others. There were a couple other key players in this, the reporter, some of the people they were interviewing to telling the history of the Abaddon Hotel, which I didn't get their names here in the cast list, but not a huge cast, but everybody did their role exactly the way they were supposed to. It was a lean cast, and it did everything. Every character played their role the way it was meant to be played. No wasted on-screen time for any of them, I don't think.
No, I agree, and I think it was. I think they all did a really great job. I thought the acting was really, really great in this entire movie from everybody.
Yeah.
It all felt like really natural, and if it was scripted, man, they did a great job. I feel like a lot of it was probably they were given a scene and they just needed to make the best of it and just play off of each other. And I think they did that super well in this movie.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another thing that's going to go back into that film I want to talk about. Do you want to go over the premise of this film in terms of what it is? Because it's pretty simple on the surface.
Yeah, it really. Yeah, it was shot as a documentary. Following a group of Halloween, I guess, creators of haunted houses, right?
Of a haunt. Yep.
And they're preparing for, I believe it was a 2009 show, and they have spent a few years in New York, so they had a bit of a following, and then they moved to a new place just outside of New York to an abandoned hotel called the Abaddon.
Correct.
Now, during the opening night, tragedy strikes, right?
Right.
And we don't know really what it was. If it was the speculations of the town was malfunctions of the house or a gas leak, but it was a massacre. Something terrible happened in that house that night.
Right. There was several people on opening night of this new haunt. There was several people that were killed. It was a mystery as to what happened. The police were being very hush-hush about what they had discovered. And the film basically opens, like Jason says, as a documentary where this reporting crew is creating this project to investigate what happened at the Abaddon. And they interview some experts. They interview some witnesses, including people that were actually there opening night, and end up getting a phone call or they get reached out to by one of the crew members, the only woman that was on the crew of the group that built the haunt. She appears out of nowhere. Nobody knows where she's been for years. She says she's been, staying with family and friends under the radar. And she says, if you want to know what really happened that night, here, watch these tapes. And she has with her a bag of tapes, which is kind of their own mini documentary that the crew that was assembling the haunt at the Abaddon was filming for themselves as their own kind of like passion project. So they give the report. She gives the reporter the tapes, and then the movie kind of transitions into all these different moving pieces, showing us, the audience, the complete picture as best as it can be shown of what really happened that night. And that's kind of what I want to get into with the different aspects that they used to show the full story.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And the main players of the story, we have Alex Taylor. He's sort of the head of the team, the owner of HELL HOUSE LLC. And then we've got longtime friends, Tony and Andrew. Then we've got Paul, who is I guess he was the first hire, as what they said in the film, but he's been with them for a while now. And then, of course, Sarah, who is Alex's girlfriend and the survivor of the massacre.
Right, exactly. And so the way that this movie is kind of chopped up is you are getting shown the documentary that the reporting crew is filming, which is comprised of their own interviews and also some footage that was recorded of a patron that was actually there as a guest, as a to go through the haunt when it opened. And that's kind of how the movie even opens, which is really kind of cool to see that right from the beginning. You know something goes wrong, and I gotta say, watching this movie the second time, which I rewatched it, just yesterday before we recorded this, uh, there's some little hints there in the beginning as you watch that footage of the person that goes through. There's a couple audio cues that really tie back into when you know what actually happened that you don't really get the first time you watch it. It's not important; it doesn't take away anything, but it's almost like they laid some breadcrumbs for the future, which I thought was kind of cool in the second watch. So between the documentary crew and the footage that was from the patron that was going through the event, and then the newly found tapes of the crew that actually put together the Abaddon, you get this full picture, including I guess you could say the security camera footage or the CCTV footage that they had installed in, mounted cameras in the event, for their own liability and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So you put all these pieces together and you get the full picture.
Yeah, and they did a really good job of putting all these different types of film and cameras and what everybody recorded together. I thought it was a really good job from the editing standpoint of the movie. They did a good job. This is not a long movie. Runtime was 93 minutes, so it's paced really well. And like you said earlier, everybody has what seems just like the right amount of screen time, and they did a good job with that.
They also threw in some still images. The photographer, the journalist who the documentary crew is interviewing, he went to the Abaddon after the events and broke in and took some pictures and was explaining the creepy vibe that he was getting. And I can't really recall seeing this very often, in film, where the entire screen is basically just a freeze frame of a picture. I feel like in most of your like modern day, like higher budget films, whenever these police procedurals, whenever they show pictures of scenes, it's still usually somebody like holding a camera up and holding a picture up, to a camera or throwing it on the table, and you get a glimpse of it. You don't see that just full screen freeze frame. Here's a picture very often, but it kind of fits more of the documentary, film style, but it really lends itself to the low budget independent film, being able to tell the story with as little as you have.
Yeah, for sure.
The movie that I wanted to kind of compare this to a little bit was a film called The House is October Built, which is another found footage kind of a Halloween themed horror film about a group of friends who are going through these haunts, these haunted house attractions, trying to find the most extreme one. And I watched this movie maybe 5 years ago. Loved it. I watch it not every year, but I watch it probably almost every couple Halloween seasons, I guess, at this point. And I love it. I've watched the second one. It is so similar in the storytelling technique to this film because you have basically them doing the exact same thing. These guys are filming a documentary of this journey, and they're using GoPros inside of their RV for these lockdown, shots of their conversations. They have handheld cameras that they're using. These are the type of films, to me personally, that inspire. Like, if you're a filmmaker or you want to make either they're short films, feature films, whatever, you see these kind of films and you look at them and you go, well, I could do that. If I had the time, I could make these movies, because there is absolutely nothing in that film, and especially in this film, that is spectacular in terms of needing a huge budget. I mean, obviously, it's just really inspiring to me.
Mm-hmm. From a production standpoint, you're right. I mean, they don't. The set is really cool and really well done. The acting is really well done. But from a production standpoint, as far as the cameras that they use, like the hardware, I mean, cell phones, GoPros, a couple, 4K, HD cameras that they had set up. There was a BTS of one of the scenes, the field scene that I saw on Instagram, and it just looked like a pretty standard like 4K Sony or something they had on a tripod. So no, you don't need these Aries and red cameras, and dollies and, helicopters and all that stuff.
Exactly.
It's like you can do a whole lot with the equipment that you got. You just need to flex your creativity a little bit and just not be afraid to get out there and do it.
Right. I mean, when you figure that most iPhones for the past couple of years are being able to shoot 4K resolution, and it's just how you use it. You don't need all the fancy gear. So, and I've always really and I've said this to you many times when I watch these movies. Like these movies make me want to go make something, go create something. And this one does the same thing. Even the second time I watched it, I'm just like, I want to go do something like this, at some point. So it's always fun to watch. And and again, it comes down to, like you said, flexing the creativity, figuring out how to tell the story. The editing in this, again, I think it just works so well. Because there's really not any major visual effects, nothing that's crazy. A lot of it is just what you don't see. It's the sound design. We talk about that all the time, just real creepy stuff. And creepy this movie is. By the way, I don't know if you read this, but this was filmed in an actual abandoned hotel that was actually converted into a Halloween haunt.
The Wardolph Hotel.
Yeah, which was in Pennsylvania, was it? I think it was. Yeah. So that's pretty cool. I bet you that place's popularity went through the roof when this movie came out. I bet you they're getting a lot of people there now. Or maybe not. Maybe they're all afraid to get there now. I'm not sure I'd go through it. But what do you think? So again, I was really hyped about this movie after I saw it. I recommended it to people. I wanted you to watch it so badly because, me being both of us being a huge horror fan, this movie really hits a lot of the notes that I prefer in horror, compared to a lot of the bigger budget blockbusters of these days. I love the slow burn creepy. That's just that's what I love. And this movie just did it so well. Did I hype it up too much to you? Did you think it was as good as I thought it was?
You hyped it up a lot. And I'm not saying you hyped it up too much. It was definitely a really fun movie. And it was, I think on the, the creepy scale, it was probably one of the best I've seen. It was, they nailed the creepy. They did a really good job with that. Like you said, it's slow burn. I'm not a huge fan of the jump scares, and I've never really loved them that much. I think they're overused in a lot of movies. This was not heavy on the gore. You said it earlier. It was more about what you didn't know and what you couldn't see, and there was things going on. There was anticipation. There was so much anticipation that was so good. And these types of movies, it just lends itself well to that type of, like, you feel like you're in that person's shoes, and you're walking around, especially like at night, and you've got that vignette, that little shaft of light that you can see, and you're looking around, and he's doing his best to try to make sure he's seen everything, but he's got the only light, so everybody has to see where his light is. And so people are walking down the hallways, but like you see something over there, and you want to go back over there. Something's going to happen, and that's the part that makes this. That's the thing that makes these kind of films so fun.
Right. And again, this is something that, like, we've said this before about certain horror tropes and with found footage, film tropes especially. But there is something that this film does. I don't know how they do it. I don't know what they've done that makes it so effective. But if you look at the majority of the creepiness in this movie, how many times were the creepy moments, you look this way and you see something, and you look back the other way, and then they look back and that same thing is there, but it's repositioned differently. Like, we've seen that so many times, but it works every time in this movie. It just keeps building that ball of dread. And
it really doesn't matter, because they even like set it up to that thing where it's like, oh, it can't do this, like it can't turn its head, right? Yep. But they build it up and they just put it right in your face, and then later in the movie you see it happen, and it's super creepy.
Yeah.
And it's not even the worst part of that. It was just the fact that it showed up at all was the actual worst part. But
right.
It was I loved everything about the movie. except for a couple things. There was a couple things that I found sort of distracting, annoying, and I think it's probably something that a lot of these films do, or they overdo. And maybe we can get to that kind of stuff after the break.
Okay. One more thing that I wanted to say a little bit about this film was this. It's kind of one of those tropes again, where when you look at it in retrospect, just like, you know, the girl in the slasher films, why are you going up the stairs when you should go out the front door? Why the hell do these people stay in this hotel? Like, I mean, we can get into that a little bit because obviously the owner, I think he had such an investment in it, physically, emotionally, financially, probably. It was difficult to walk away from it, but my goodness, like his whole crew by the end of it is like, we should get out of here. And they stayed, and bad things happen. But yeah, let's take a quick break, and then we will come back and we will dive a little deeper into the movie. Jason can tell us what he didn't like about it, and this movie is not without its plot holes, trust me, but we'll talk about those in just a second. All right, we're back, and Jason can tell us now everything that he didn't like about HELL HOUSE LLC.
Everything is you make it sound like there's a lot, and there really wasn't. Like you said just before the break, this movie is not without its plot holes. We can avoid those. Plot holes happen. A movie needs to proceed from the beginning to the end, and I get that. It was something in the editing that it was something that was bothering me even during it, and then a couple people brought it up. I saw in some of the comments, and I went back and watched a few times, and just like little bits and pieces of it, and it was those scenes that just really it took me out of whatever was going on. And I think there's a better way to do it, but it was the glitch effects in the editing. I mean, it was like times 100 in this movie. There was so much glitching, and I get that whatever supernatural thing was going on was messing with the cameras. I understand that, but man, let's tone it down with the glitches a little bit. I'm just speaking to all filmmakers everywhere. Let's bring it down a little bit. Let's think of a better way for another outer dimensional thing to interfere with cameras. Honestly, I think it would have been better if it was like more of a staticky kind of thing, where the picture would fuzz out a little bit, and you would sort of lose audio, you'd lose picture when it came back. But the glitching was like, oh man, it was overboard. And it was the glitching in combination with the strobing. I have a hard time with strobing anyway, and there was a lot of strobing in this. From a visual standpoint, I was having a really hard time just watching it because of that. So there were parts where it took me right out of the movie.
So the strobing scene is one of the more. It's a creepy scene. It's a creepy setup that gets revealed, there. And by the way, you probably read the same IMDb facts that I did, but when that guy leaves that room and throws up, that was real. He was actually sick after doing that. I think the glitch effect, and you have worked more with video than I have. I think that's just the easy way out to make those cuts for, the two different bits that you're trying to put together to show, oh, there was not something there and now there is something there. Like sure. That scene in particular. I don't know. I kind of like your fuzz, your kind of blur out. Like when you're showing film that is supposedly handheld documentary style, and you're a smaller budget film, an indie film, what are your options there to make that kind of transition without some sort of stutter or glitch effect?
Like I said, I think like a fuzz, almost like let's think of it from a digital standpoint, right? What's going to happen when something goes wrong with a digital camera? You're not going to get these like really colorful glitches, especially in this kind of scene where there's nothing colorful going on, yet you have all kinds of colorful glitches happening. I think probably something more where like there's just weird cuts, like you just lose frames. Let's just lose frames, right? where it's just like something didn't record completely, but audio cuts out as well. It could even be where audio just starts to drown out, like 10 or 15 seconds beforehand. And that can be replaced with some sort of staticky. If you want to throw in some glitches in here and there, that's fine. I get it. And it lends itself well to what's going on. Everybody kind of understands it. But in this movie, there was so much of it. And it was just, I found myself getting really tired of seeing it.
Right.
And I think it's one of those situations where if I find myself thinking about it during a movie instead of what's going on in the film, I'm out of it at that point, right? I'm not really watching the movie. I'm just like getting annoyed with what's happening.
Yeah. I'd say, and that's something that I know I said that these films, these handheld, found footage kind of things are inspiring, to filmmakers, but also when I watch them, I do it more with films like this than I do with bigger budget films, where I am always thinking like, how did they do that? How could Jason and I do that? How did they film this or edit it? Like, I think it's just a byproduct of somebody that has, like you and I, that we have done some smaller video projects, and we like to play around with that kind of stuff and love behind the scenes stuff. I think it's just, if you're in that kind of world, you can't help but have that little switch turn on sometimes, especially with movies like that.
Yeah.
So,
now, what about you? Was there anything that you found distracting, or what didn't you like about this film?
So the two things I didn't really love, again, it's a trope. I don't know why they didn't leave. There is a scene where two of the guys, one of the guys disappears, and then the other two guys are basically, one of the guys like, we have to leave, and the other guy tells him, no, there's something you don't know. Let me go tell you why we have to stay for this guy, and you never learn what that is. And that really bothered the hell out of me, because if it's such a big deal that you guys are going to stay here in this place that is completely screwed up, at least let the audience in on the secret, to some degree.
And not only that, they went through the trouble of making that whole field scene, talking about whatever it was, and they still never revealed it.
Yeah.
Like that entire scene, like while it was very emotional and it was a very kind of like a visual rest from everything that was going on, I was like, well, that could as soon as it finished, I was like, that entire scene could have been just removed from the film at all, and it wouldn't have made any difference.
Yeah, but you do see that sometimes in the found footage genre that are supposed to be documentaries, because they're basically just filming everything. That's the whole idea behind documentary, and then they go back and they edit after the fact. I guess I could see where it would make sense there, but for that scene, you're right. Like, why did they even have the camera there? The two of those guys, to have this conversation. Why did they bring the camera to that field? That is kind of strange. Now, I didn't even think about that when I was watching it. The other thing, again, there's suspension of belief in any type of fiction, especially horror fiction. You have to suspend belief. The ending of this movie, well, I like the ending. It's a clever little twist. I mean, the second time you watch it, it's pretty apparent what's going on. But the reason that the documentary crew leaves the interview to go to the house, when I heard our main character say what she said to them to encourage them to go, the second time I sat back and be like, why aren't you questioning this? Like, why aren't you saying, why should we go? What's there that you haven't been able to tell us?
Right.
There's no reason for you to actually go. And just because she says so, like, why? I would have asked more questions. It was me, thinking about writing it. I don't know how I would have done it differently to get them there so the end of the movie could happen. But
yeah.
To me, it seemed a little lazy just to have her be like, "Hey, you should go." Yeah, we should go. I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think so too. Again, a movie has to move forward. I get that. That's part of it. And again, if you really think about the whole ending, how did they recover the film from that camera?
Right. Yeah. That's another good point. Like who got this to then recover to make this? Yeah. Don't
Who
think about it too
successfully
much.
went into the house and got back out?
Yeah. Let's not. Yeah. Don't think about this movie. This movie is so good and so creepy. Also, I I am such an advocate for this. I don't even know how many of our episodes I have mentioned this before, but there's an intimacy to horror films that has to be respected for them to really hit home the way they're meant to hit home. So the first time I watched this movie, I was by myself in my basement with my TV, my surround sound, lights off. It creeped the hell out of me. It did. The second time for the rewatch, I watched it actually here at my desk while I was doing some other stuff on my iPad. I did have headphones on so I could, hear everything, but not nearly as creepy. Maybe it was a combination of the second watch versus just it being in broad daylight on the smaller screen, not as immersive. It really takes away from some of the drama.
Was this the movie that you told me about where the one bedroom scene where
Yes.
he wakes up and as soon as it was done, that scene ended, you had to turn the lights up in the room a little bit?
I did. Yeah. So the lights went from being completely turned off to being raised about 15%, just so I could get a feel for my surroundings, see what was going on. That scene is creepy. It's creepy. Yep. That's probably, see, again, it's so strange. The last movie I can remember doing that on was Sinister. When I watched that by myself the first time, I raised the lights up a little bit at one point in that movie, just because it was so dark and so scary. Yeah, and I just got chills in that scene, and I needed some reassurance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those bedroom scenes were probably they were two of my favorite in that entire movie.
Why do you think that? They went after him specifically versus any of the other characters? Why was it always him that seemed to be the one that see the stuff? There was really no reason for that either. Why weren't they equal opportunity frighteners?
That's a good point. I don't know. Well, first of all, who was it? I think it was Tony. He made it very clear a couple times in the movie he doesn't believe in that kind of stuff.
Right.
So even if he did see it, he probably just shrugged it off. But here's Paul. He's got the camera. He's getting it. He's recording it. So he's got something to look back on, which they did actually one time go back and look on it. So I don't know. Maybe the others were catching a little bit. Like that first time in the bedroom, he had no idea what was going on. I mean, everybody else did, but it was like, why are you talking to that thing in the corner? Like that's not normal, right?
Right.
But it was just one of those situations where I think he just happened to be catching it on camera. It may have been happening to everybody else. They may have been doing their little haunts, but nobody was catching it. Nobody was really seeing it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, don't dig. This is one of those films where on the surface it's very effective. It's very creepy. Again, if you watch it in the right environment, it's just a fun movie to be so simple and so a smaller budget film. I really like it. I do want to watch the other two. Just don't dig too much beneath the surface of this film, or you will find problems.
It's true. I did hear that the original cast reprised their roles in the third movie.
And I'm very curious about that because I did look at the IMDb a little bit for the second and the third, and I was looking at some of the IMDb credits for the cast. And yeah, it's like there's nobody in 2, but in 3 they're there. And so I'm like, well, what happens in 2? Like, I don't understand what's going to happen. So I want to watch them, but at the same time, I don't, because I'm just worried that given the type of movies that these are, the first one's going to be the best, and then the rest are just going to be imitations of the first two. And I think I read somewhere, it might have been on the user reviews on Shudder, that 2 is the weakest and 3 is better. It kind of wraps up the story. 2 is almost like a stepping stone to get to 3, which I mean, I don't know.
And I'm pretty sure I know 3 does, but I don't know if 2 does. But the rest of the trilogy revolves around the Abaddon.
Right.
Yes. So it's not just about like HELL HOUSE LLC and what comes with that corporation. They revolve more around the Abaddon itself maybe a history of it. And then the third movie, I'd have to presume something else has come to the house or come to that abandoned hotel, and we've got to be back in it afterwards if we're seeing the original characters. So
Right. I'm surprised and honestly a little disappointed that you haven't gone on one of your demon deep dives, because they actually mention, I think, in the film at some point somebody does that the name Abaddon is actually the name given to the demon guarding the gates of hell. So I think all of our listenership is probably very upset that you have not brought this point up at all, because you are our resident demon expert.
I know, and I hate to disappoint, but I just didn't go. I didn't go diving into that. I didn't even do what did I call it last time? A shallow snorkel. I didn't even do that. I just didn't even. I didn't even take a look.
That's what we should.
But I do remember. I do remember them mentioning the name Abaddon was the demon guarding the gates of hell, which.
No, it's it's too late. You can't just start talking now about you have to make it. You can't make it up on the scene.
I wasn't gonna make it up. I was just gonna say I liked the way that they dropped that in and kind of explains a little bit what was going on throughout the rest of the movie.
I'm still not actually sure I understand exactly what happened at the end of this film, by the way, and not the end, but what actually happened the night of the event where everybody died. Opening night. I mean, they show you to a certain degree, but I'm still not really like.
I don't remember seeing anything happen. I just remember like seeing something about to happen, and then you see Paul's demise, but
you see several people in robes. You see these cloaked figures that are starting to emerge.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, what I were they in cloaks, or were they looked like they had like top hats on? I didn't understand what was going on.
I didn't see a top hat, but I saw like robed figures like just slowly kind of leaking out into the basement, and then they were of course in the attic. Again, I'm not digging too much into this film. I think it does what it set out to do. This is not trying to win Oscars. It's not trying to win a screenplay award. It's just trying to make a fun, creepy movie, and I think it did that really well.
It was a really creepy movie. It was very entertaining. It was a really entertaining film.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it a lot. They did a good job with their low budget. I thought the actors were phenomenal. That's where this movie shines.
Oh, that's what
the editing was really well done, minus the glitch effects, and the acting. My gosh, the acting was like top notch in this. I think the acting just carried this whole thing through.
Yeah, that's. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I did want to bring that back to. The House is October Built, which was when I first saw that film, and I recommended it to some people that were closer to me that are big horror fans. That was the one thing that I kind of said was it felt so natural, like the interaction between the characters and what they were doing, how they reacted. It just seems so unscripted. Like you said, it was almost kind of like we know they did with the Blair Witch Project. It was, we're going to push you in these situations. Here are your characters' personalities. Just make the scene. I feel like I think that they kind of do that a lot with some of these found footage films. I think this one was probably a little more scripted than Blair Witch was, but again, I think there was some improvisation here a lot. I mean, because it did feel very natural.
Yeah, I think it had to have been. Otherwise, they just memorized their lines to a T. Right. There had to have been some back and forth, just playing off of each other during the whole time.
Yeah, I'm really surprised we haven't seen Ryan Jennifer Jones in more things, like, because her acting credits are very small, and I mean 3 of them or 2 or 3 of them are these movies. Because I thought she did a really good job. She looks like she could be in more of these kind of films. Like, I'd like to see her in more. She did a good job.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think in the future what we should do, if we get motivated, I think we should watch 2 and 3 and just do one episode talking about the rest of the Hell House LLC trilogy down the road.
Yeah, we can talk about how it carried on throughout the rest. Yeah, I like that idea.
And whether it holds up to the original. So
Yeah,
so we tried not to spoil too much of this film, because a lot of the creepiness relies on the surprises of what you don't know is coming or what you don't understand to be happening. So sorry if we were a little shy on the details, but long story short, this is a really good creepy movie. If you're looking for something quick and fun to watch one night, it's a great Halloween movie. I promise you that. Just watch it in the dark, turn the sound up, as I recommend you do for all horror movies. I think you'll have a good time.
Yep, I agree 100% with everything you just said. Very good film.
Just the way I like
it. Yep. Yeah, I think we could both agree that this was a really fun film. Certainly not the best film we've ever seen, but it was very entertaining, very creepy, and even though it was a fairly, I hate the word predictable. I hate when people say it's a predictable film, but it's not like you don't really know what's going on. But sometimes that's just the fun of it,
Yeah, exactly. Predictable is not always bad. I mean, there's no unique stories anymore. We know that. It's just what kind of spin, what kind of flavor of your own you can put on it. So,
yeah, definitely worth a watch.
For sure. And I don't know. I think one of the reasons this movie kind of falls under the radar a little bit is I don't actually know how many platforms it's available on. I know it's on Shudder. It might be on Amazon Prime, but I don't know if it's just like Shudder through Amazon Prime. I don't even know if it's available to rent or buy on iTunes. I'm sure it is, but go search it out. It's definitely worth a rent, even if you have to pay a few bucks for it. If you're a fan of the genre, go for it. I definitely have been recommending to people for the last 6-7 months for sure. So, Jason, anything else tonight about HELL HOUSE LLC?
No, sir. I look forward to watching the other two and chopping it up with you.
Cool. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this has been episode 8 of the Hallowed Horror Podcast. We've discussed HELL HOUSE LLC. We both loved it. Thank you so much for listening, and we will be back with a brand new episode next week.